Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, a victory scored for tasteful chili as the Red Raiders down the chili barbarians of Cincinnati on the road. And regarding an alleged Micah Hudson sighting in Lubbock, we find out something or nothing.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you, and it's always great to be back together on the heels of a Red Raider dub. Grant McCaslin and the Red Raiders get a win again on the road after their best road start ever in league play. After an 81-71 win over Cincinnati. We'll be diving headfirst into that and what we saw from the cast of characters making an impact. Obviously, some bench impact we got to get into. Also want to get into something that leaves me feeling a bit conflicted. Am I encouraged and concerned by the very same thing? I've got a question for you I want to get to in just a moment regarding what we've seen, Chris. And also, because of the avalanche, the inundation of questions regarding an alleged Micah Hudson sighting, here's a mention out of left field for you. This week, we're going to get to some smoke, I guess, surrounding a former Red Raider, now former Aggie-ish as well. Been an interesting timeline this offseason there with the heralded five-star recruit that spent a year at Texas Tech. Is there anything to even be discussed? You may just laugh me off here, but I'm going to ask you anyway. On behalf of the people, Chris, I know you've already been chopping it up with the Matador mob this morning on that subject, but we'll get to that coming up in just a moment. But first, the Red Raider win. And anytime you're being described in the context of doing something that the program has not done, or like, hey, we hadn't done this in 50 years or whatever it might be, you know you're doing something really well, man. So the road recipe cooking once again, and once again the result is successful.
Yeah, and this one, in many ways, was maybe the most impressive of your four conference road wins. I think the BYU won just because it was early in the league race and the environment that you played in, and there's some talent level there. But you know, Cincinnati is a team that beat you last year, as we had talked about on this show, and it's one of those matchups that doesn't necessarily. I mean, they're more of a grinded out physical style on purpose, and you're going to see some of those kinds of teams coming up, like with Houston and all that. But I just again, is it the best time to play them, worst time to play them? And I guess at this point, it really didn't matter because they had lost 4 to start out the league race. But if you looked at it on paper, none of them were. I guess the Kansas State one to open up the conference slate for them in Manhattan is now a bad loss. But the other ones were like Baylor and Kansas, and they just didn't have really a bad one in there. And you know, and then they'd won 2 in a row, and so like okay, they're starting to figure it out because this is a team that was I think ranked as high as like 15th in the country in the non-conference. They put together a really solid non-conference slate, some things to hang their hat on, and played well, and it made national news. And then it just, when the league race started, just kind of fell apart a little bit. But it was a full environment. About I think 12,500 is what the Fifth Third Arena holds. My first time there and on the campus of Cincinnati and everything. But you large in part controlled this entire game. Now, I mean, it was a bit back and forth to get going, but you large in part controlled most of this game. And what you're doing here is just, it's very impressive. And I think the thing that continues to, one, if you remember, I mentioned this on the broadcast, but if you remember back to remember when last year the Red Raider football team was kind of struggling to win games on the road, and it was like a thing. We were talking about it like, okay, it's going to be a thing until it's not, until you figure out ways to start winning some games on the road. And you've since remedied that. But I remember Joey McGuire even kind of saying publicly, like, man, I called Grant and asked him for some because they are so good on the road. Remember, I think that Grant's last year at North Texas, they had I think it was the best road record in the country. And you're starting to see a little bit of that play out now. And I'm struggling to kind of just put my finger on it. But it's crazy to me that you are largely undersized across the board, and yet you keep out rebounding some of these teams that are bigger than you and more physical than you and all the stuff, but yet you keep playing harder. And I think that message has clearly been received after the opener versus UCF, when you just didn't have that edge to you. But the head coach clearly has an edge in these road games, and he displays it. He doesn't, he coaches his guys hard, as people will see on TV. And this one was very rewarding. This was one that worried me a great deal, just because I remember last year, and I just didn't know if this was a good matchup for you. And I think I said it, if you shoot it well, you'll be in good shape. Well, guess what? 12 made threes, and you shot it well.
Yeah, I'm especially, in like a rebounding category, looking at what I felt like would be an uphill battle for you heading into this one. But you get it done there, and that was great to see. And you love it also because, as you alluded to, you feel like that traces directly back to effort and really just playing tough and playing hard when you're doing that. So you always love to have that characteristic. And then, the offensive output was a sight for sore eyes, and it was just about what the doctor ordered as far as the timing, because I think it was just a couple of days ago, had put a poll question up for the YouTube subscribers asking about thoughts on the offense. And I guess maybe we could say, certainly the last two, maybe three of the last four, where offensively had been tough to come by. And the question was just asked, are you concerned about it? Are you concerned, but who cares? They're still winning. Not concerned at all. What problems are you talking about? Those were kind of the options to run the gamut there. And I think a lot were just saying, essentially, they're winning, who cares? And sort of an it'll sort itself out kind of approach. Well, very next ball game, here's 81. And I think you saw, I don't know if you saw this, Chris, but I saw a national report. I think it was John Rothstein talking about, is this Grant McCaslin's best offense ever? And so I thought, okay, how quickly things can change. And, maybe some of that is what we've seen offensively, like you talked about, I think on a previous episode this week, rooted in the grind, the nature of the grind when it comes to the Big 12 conference, and, what shows up or doesn't on the road or away. Also some credit to some of those tough Big 12 defenses and just some of the style that we get into. But I could have sworn you and I were just talking about, like, hey, could this be the ugliest one yet as far as some of the grinders you've been in? And then I'll be danged, you shoot it well. Wasn't your most effective night from three-point land at 39%, but it was effective. And you put up 81 in a place where you may know the number. What was it? It was mid-60s or low 60s, I think they were allowing on average for opposing offenses. And you leave with 81 and a 10-point win. So a lot of that was kind of scratching me where I itched as a fan, as far as maybe what we hadn't seen so much of in some recent games that they showed up with now on the road.
Yeah, we had talked a lot about the scoring droughts and things like that in recent games, and that's not what you got here. There was no scoring droughts for anybody. I mean, and in fact, both teams, Haxton and I were looking at the stat monitor a lot of the cases, and it's like, you were 6 of your last 6, Cincinnati 6 of the last 7. I mean, it was just like there was a lot of shot making going on. Yeah, but I do think you're able to create some stops and grind away at it when it was needed. And it's a Cincinnati team that they are physical. They're built this way. This is the way they want to play. They want to play hard. They play 10 guys because they do play hard. And so he's a little bit deeper on the bench, I think, is Wes Miller. But I just think you're kind of figuring some things out with your team a little bit, and you're still. I don't even say at times you played great, and these are all positives. I mean, these are all positives. Because I think at any one point in the game, you can say, this guy took the game over. And I feel like in the first half, Kevin Overton did that a bit. He put you in a good spot. I think at times Christian Anderson did it. I think at times JT Toppin did it. And I certainly think that Chance McMillan did it at certain points. And that's what's fun. But, and we'll get into more of that, like how you got to this point. But I just think that it's just crazy because I mean, I just look out there and it's like, I don't know if you want to get in a fist fight with any of these teams, but you are out toughing them, because you want it more, and you're first to the ball, and you're doing some different things. Even a guy like Federico, who I didn't think played particularly well at all against these Bearcats, he still had 3 offensive rebounds. Now he missed a dunk and he had some issues and was over 2 at the free throw line and some different things like that. But it's just like you're getting a little chip in here and there, and it's just, I don't know, it's impressive. Because what they're doing right now, it's just not easy. This is a kind of game. This is a game on a weeknight in a very cold January to where you've won a few games and you just give it back, kind of deal. It's just a trap. It's but these are the games where if you're serious about trying to contend for a conference championship, that those kinds of teams win, and you did. Because if you're middling, if you're just kind of middle of the pack and you're just kind of a bubble team, you drop these kinds of games. Because the other team just has a little bit more that night, and you're just like, when it gets hard, you're like, okay, but I mean, you were sending them up the aisles, man, with about 3.5 to go. I mean, I was having a lot of fun. Man.
Yes, that's not what I was scripting.
me neither. Yes, me neither. And I just,
I'll take it all day. Yes. One of those difficult parts of this is trying to kind of decipher not only what we saw in this one, but I've seen prior to this one. And this is where it comes to me wondering if I can feel encouraged and concerned at the same time, or should I choose one or the other? It involves the impact of Darrion Williams. First, today's episode brought to you by Prize Picks. Testing your skills on Prize Picks this football season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports and the best way to spice up any game, anytime. You think you got what it takes to win up to 100 times your money? All you got to do is select 2 to 6 players, pick more or less on their projected stats, place your entry, and boom, you're ready to roll. Prize Picks is not only the best way to get action on sports in most states, including Texas, but Prize Picks also puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When the picks hit, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. With easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and a giant selection of players, projections, and stat categories, it's no surprise that Prize Picks is the #1 daily fantasy sports app. So get in on the fun and the winning and download the Prize Picks app today and use our code LOCKEDONCollege, and you're going to get $50 instantly when you play only $5. Again, that's our code LOCKEDONCollege on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you just play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. With Prize Picks, run your game. And from a scoring standpoint, mostly a non-impact Chris, but the team is finding a way to win even when he is limited. And that's where it comes to something that could be encouraging, but you think about him being limited. Okay, is there something concerning there? And I will say, for his sake, he's still engaged in the ball game and impacting in other areas. He's not one of those that I've seen like offensively, if it's tough, here we go, I'm checked out of the game, in all other aspects. There are certainly players that'll do that. I do think he's still making impacts in other areas and engaged and all that good stuff. But offensively, it just wasn't coming for him. And we had seen that before, but we had also seen the team find a way to still get the win. So I don't know. I'm conflicted a little bit about maybe how I'm trying to interpret this, but how are you interpreting what you're seeing with the team picking up some of the slack when Darrion is limited?
I can't view this as anything other than a huge positive. I mean, I think large in part compared to what we are used to, and he set the bar high. You have won 2 games in a row in this league against a really good Arizona team, and then a team at their place that had won a couple in a row and had been ranked and all those things, and yet he has large in part not affected the game anywhere close to the way we're used to seeing.
Yeah.
And I think I can only take that as a huge positive because you're not needing it and you're still figuring out ways to get to where you want to go. And, Grant, this is what we talked about after the Arizona game with each other, is that the more ways they can find to get to the end with more than the other guy, that's just, it increases your margin for error. It doesn't, you don't have to follow the same recipe, because I think you had said, well, if there's only one recipe, then teams do everything they can to stop it. But you're figuring out what, because we've seen Darion the scorer, we've seen Darion the closer, we've seen Darion the facilitator, and he was really none of those in this one. And he played 27 minutes, but he loose with the ball. He turned it over 4 times. I mean, he's credited with half of your turnovers, and some of them were just bad, and they lead to runouts going the other way. And I would say to you that I can't quite tell if he's moving as well as he normally does from a couple of these issues that he's had in the last week or so. He's still playing, and I think, contributing in different ways, but he's just maybe doesn't have quite the quick twitch that we're used to seeing. But yeah, I think this is a huge. It's not what's wrong with Darion. It's look at all the other things that are right about what that's the way I'm going to view this, because he's too good of a player to not factor into some of these games going forward, right? But
he took over a road win 2 games ago. I mean, it was just it's not. We're picking it apart a little here, because that's what we do when we get into these conversations. I don't want to make too big a deal of it, but yeah, he just sealed one for you a couple of nights ago, right?
Yes, he did, and I just think it's a huge development, if anything, that you don't have to pencil him in for 16, 7, and 5, and like, okay, if we don't get that, we're screwed. I mean, no, you're not getting anywhere close to that in these last 2, and yet here you are.
I'm curious about, as we kind of continue through the cast of characters here, making an impact. Obviously, we saw the bench make a big impact, and I'm curious how you feel about what we've seen so far with Christian Anderson. We know the story. We've been talking about him a lot lately because he's really put together a consistent run of success and making big impacts on games. He's been playing big minutes, not only in total, but the moments in the game when he is on the floor. We've noticed that for a long time now. He does it again, and maybe in his best outing so far. I don't know, given the context and given some of the totals statistically. 4 for 7 from beyond the arc, had 5 rebounds, had 18 points, 3 assists. I mean, nothing about it looks like a freshman, Chris, but this guy, I think, is charting a course towards some conference accolades when it's all said and done. Is there a freshman and a newcomer of the year, or is there just a newcomer? Because he's got to be in one of those categories.
Those are 2 separate. Yeah,
okay.
I think he would be more in line of maybe like freshman, and
he's headed that way, right? I mean, he's in that company.
Oh yeah, Baylor's got a few guys. I mean, there's some. This is a deep league with some very talented players. Here's the thing that jumps out at you when you look at what Christian Anderson was a part of last night in Cincinnati. He played more minutes than anybody. I mean, he played 35 minutes off the bench. So to do that, you have to play well. You have to have the trust of your coach, and I just think there's, he's in there in crunch time on the road with everybody screaming and yelling and having to figure it out. He's having to make decisions, and it's pretty damn impressive, man. Because he just never. There's that old adage about the duck on the pond. I think I've used it before, but like sometimes you see a duck on the pond and it's just smooth and smooth as glass on the water. And yet they may be paddling like crazy underneath, but you don't really see that. That's how I view him. He may be paddling like crazy beneath the surface, but it's just there's no ripples. I mean, he's just so smooth, everything. And I think it's what he's doing on the defensive end that is allowing him to play these extended minutes, because he's not a liability. Undersized a bit, sure, like your team is, and Grant has talked about this, but he's exerting a lot of effort, but it's just the way he kind of maestros it and just knows when to shoot it, when to pass it, who to get it to. I don't know. It's just fun kind of watching him orchestrate things whenever, because that's what a guard's job is. And I think big picture, he's the point guard of your future. So that's what I mean. It's like
hey, the future is now.
and you're
maybe
not
not
wrong.
specifically in the point guard role, but I'm just saying what can he be doing better? I know there are some things they've got to be coaching him up on, but
Yeah,
surface level, what could he be doing much better? The minute thing you started with is crazy to think about. You
35
to go, hey, January 22nd, road game in the Big 12. This guy's going to play the most. What?
I mean,
what's gone wrong is what I would have said.
Well, maybe so, and to be playing more minutes than Chance McMillan. But see, this is also a positive development. I mean, you don't.
Yeah.
I worry about having to redline it with guys like McMillan and Darrion Williams, and like if you're having to put them out there for 35 minutes, and at some point you get to the point of diminishing returns to where they are just tired or they're worn out, and you need to try to keep them fresher. And so I don't know if only playing 32 for Chance and then Christian Anderson playing 35, if you can bank those minutes and like to where you kind of hold that off. But I think that's worth discussing too, because I think a lot of these teams, they have 9 or 10 guys. You're only rolling with 8. And I just think when you can, it's pretty fun to not have to play your oldest guys like all these minutes and have the young fella play the most. I mean, that just, again, as far as not on the bingo card, wasn't thinking that I would show up to the building and he would come off the bench and play more minutes than anybody else. And I'm thinking like you, I'm like, okay, is that good or bad? I don't know, but it was really good in this case. And
yeah,
it's just, they're all productive minutes. Like his, as I look at it, his plus minus was 9. I mean, JT Toppin had the best plus minus, but that just speaks to kind of where you're at with him on the floor. And again, you have to remember, he's got the ball in his hands a lot, and he's having to make decisions on behalf of the team out there and on behalf of the head coach, and seemingly making the right one every time. Because the shot making is what's crazy, but it's all the other things that come with it that he just knows. I guess he knows when to go, knows when to slow. There's another saying for you. He has a good feel for what the game needs at the time and what the game is dictating to him, and just doesn't make a ton of mistakes. And it's just hard to believe he's so young, but man, it's impressive.
Yeah, that's something that usually comes with a lot of maturity. So kind of takes you back to see a guy as a freshman doing some of this stuff.
Yeah, because three assists, 0 turnovers, and 3 steals. I mean, and some of the steals is like his IQ, like anticipating, but I mean, like to play 35 minutes, not turn it over when you've got the ball in his hands as much as he did. It's just, I don't know. It's just a lot of fun to watch. But I think as your aforementioned John Rothstein said on the social media deal, buy stock now.
Yeah, you better. You better. He's working on that rookie contract right now. It ain't going to be the same for long. All right, man. Congratulations to the Red Raiders on that win. 10 points on the road. Fantastic to see over Cincinnati as they come back home. It'll be a Sunday tip-off as they host Oklahoma State. So looking forward to that one, and we'll get the table set for Red Raiders and Cowboys before the week is done. Before this conversation is done, Chris, I'm going to have a fairly simple question for you. First, today's episode brought to you by Talkspace, because therapy can be a game changer. It can help manage stress, improve sleep, and help you communicate more effectively. But finding the right therapist and fitting sessions into a busy schedule can be a challenge. That's where Talkspace comes in. Talkspace, the leading virtual therapy provider, makes getting the help you need easy, accessible, and affordable. With Talkspace, signing up is simple. You can match with a licensed therapist who fits your needs, usually within only 48 hours. And it's convenient. You can have sessions from the comfort of your home and even message your therapist between appointments. Plus, Talkspace is covered by many insurance plans, and for most insured members, there's a $0 copay. And as a listener of Locked On Texas Tech, you're going to get $80 off your first month with Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com/lockedoncollege and enter our promo code SPACE80, SPACE 80. That's space 80 to match with a licensed therapist today. Go to Talkspace.com/lockedoncollege and enter the promo code space 80 to get $80 off your first month and show your support for the show. That's Talkspace.com/lockedoncollege and our promo code space 80. Now, I'm on the internet like others throughout the day, and I see conversation begin to bubble up trickling up, bubbling up to the surface yesterday, and it may have began even before that, but regarding one Micah Hudson, a prominent name on the Red Raider football radar over the last year, 5-star recruit, spent a year as a wide receiver, said Paya, transfer portal, becomes an Aggie, okay? Left turn, decides not to become an Aggie. Maybe the most understandable thing he's done so far. And then there's conversation about alleged sightings of one Micah Hudson in the 806 this week. So I guess I'm just here to ask you, is this something I should be paying attention to, or something I should let just slide off the back like water on a duck's back? What is happening? Can you give us a handle on the situation?
Just when I thought we were done with the old Micah Hudson storyline, they've dragged us back in, Calvin. Just kicking and screaming, right? It is, it is. I don't know if there's ever been a player in all my years that has had more discussion about things and it being shrouded in secrecy and what's really going on. Okay, so here's, I guess, what I'm prepared. And we won't talk about this on tomorrow's show. The next time we talk about this, I think we need to have, more info, or let it have played out or whatever. But I would tell you that at this point, at the time you and I are talking, I wouldn't rule out a return. I would not. I think that's complicated, and I think that's where the whole thing is. It's like, it's not, like what's the Facebook status? It's complicated. It's complicated, and that's where this is. I can't. There's some of this I can't necessarily confirm. I have been told, again, can't confirm that he's not enrolled in classes at A&M. I do believe that he was in Lubbock recently. I can't pin that down on specifically day, time, and all that for those that will ask, because they will. Was he packing up? Was it a meeting? Hey man, sure. I mean, but I guess I'm just prepared to say that don't rule anything out, but it's complicated. And I think there's a lot of things that need to happen. And I don't know if those things will happen or not. And I don't know where this stands. But I just would tell you, don't rule this out. But I'm not telling you that this is likely or unlikely, or we're just, that's where I would leave it. I'll be careful about how I choose my words here, because this has just been, everybody hangs on the tone and context and all that. Well, he furrowed his brow when he said this, so I'm guessing it's, like you can't win on this stuff. And I think less is more in this case on what needs to be said. I'll just offer up, it's a bit complicated, and I just would leave you with it. I would not rule out a return, and it's just that's maybe the best way to end it. So you asked me, do I pay attention? I think you probably should, but
that's what I'm hearing.
But that's not me, going one way too far or the other. I just we'll just kind of see how this plays out, and I think it'll play out fairly quickly because the semester is ongoing and all those things. So you need to have some closure at some point soon, because I think that a return here, sitting out the spring semester, headed elsewhere, is the A&M not being enrolled part real or not? I mean, all that's,
that makes sense. I mean, that's the most just easy to believe. And I have no doubt he got down there for 30 minutes. He walked on the grass and they yelled. And, no, I'm just kidding. I don't know. Yeah. There's a lot involved and it's just complicated. So I'll just quit talking there and we'll leave it. Terrific. I didn't want to sleep tonight anyway. Be watching round the clock. Let's get back into plane tracking season, folks. Very, very interesting, and I'm sure I'll check in with you again on this subject in the future. So,
I can't wait. It'll be Micah Hudson watch like 8.0 on. Here we are. But
we had Brian Fantana on the scene. We've got Chris Level on the scene, even better. Chris, appreciate the time as always, man. The insights and perspectives, enjoyed it. welcome back. Glad you made it back from Cincinnati without an appearance on the first 48. Great to have you back in God's country, and looking forward to wrapping up the week in a couple of days, getting ready for another one as you're back at United Supermarkets Arena against the Cowboys. So we'll turn our attention to Oklahoma State, among other things, before we are done this week. So hang with us. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Chris, we'll see you for the next one.
Sounds good. We'll talk to everybody tomorrow, and guns up.
Guns up to the everydayers for always being out there, and shout out to the Matador Mob. Hit the show notes, find a link for a free 14-day trial if you are interested in becoming a Matador Mobster. That's your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text and straight to your phone. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks for the time, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.